Hey, thanks for listening to The Create Unknown. To unlock the ad-free extended version of this episode, sign up at patreon.com/thecreateunknown, and you'll get the rest of August 2019 for free. If you're listening to this and it's no longer August 2019, what's the future like? All of this stuff is a negotiation. Being a YouTuber is a negotiation. Being a stand-up comedian is a negotiation. Being a human being in society is a negotiation between what you think.
We're getting meta.
I know. Well, look.
This just blew up. This is like meaning of life level stuff. This is good.
This episode is brought to you by Audible. Go to audibletrial.com/thecreateunknown to get a free audiobook, and stay tuned for my book recommendation. That's audibletrial.com/thecreateunknown. Now on to the show. Hey, welcome to The Create Unknown. I am Kevin Lieber. With me, as always, is Matthew Tabor, and we're going to get into a meme that is supposed to be inspirational, but instead just angered the two of us. Well, I would say it caused me to maybe like wrinkle my nose, and it caused you, it caused you, Matt, I think, to want to put your face through the wall. Is that accurate?
It was bad. It's some of the worst advice you're ever going to get in your life. But everybody's talking about it as if it's the best possible advice you're going to get. No, it's absolutely wrong. It's terrible. It's heart attack inducing, which I suppose if it does that, you don't need advice from the grave. But that's the only upside to this. If it actually kills you, that's the only way you win with this advice, is if it kills you.
So I thought it was gonna. I thought it would make you put your head through a wall, but it's actually causing you to leave this mortal realm. It's that bad for you.
That's right. It's the stakes are a lot higher than just smashing your head against a wall.
Yeah. Well, so we're going to get into that. First, I wanted to give a shout out to a great comment that we got from Caleb Robertson in our last podcast. Towards the end of it, I started sort of noodling with the idea of YouTube creators getting purchased in such a way, or like a long-term sponsorship by a production company or a brand as a means of dealing with demonetization or that sort of thing. And Caleb actually brought up a bunch of different scenarios over the years that he's seen worked that are in the same ballpark as what I was talking about, but I think they're each their own different case in such a way that it's a lot to talk about. So, for instance, he mentioned Film Riot only having one sponsor, domain.com. Also, Real Engineering always being sponsored by brilliant.org. And I think that that's a really interesting scenario, but maybe not exactly what I was talking about, if that makes sense.
And also the PBS Digital Studios sponsoring a bunch of people, supporting a bunch of people so that they can make the channels that they had been making. You know, they came under that umbrella. So they're in that comment, there were all of these things that kind of were tangential to that idea that we were talking about. They were all offshoots of it. And I think you're right that everything he listed there they're like the roots and the branches and twigs and all of that stuff of that central idea. And thinking about that in terms of how sponsorships used to be, and I mean really used to be, like radio shows in the 40s, that kind of thing. We're actually coming back to some of those same relationships.
Which you and I watched because we're 97 years old. So, you know, we watched Howdy Doody and what was Burns and Allen, where, you know, they not only were those shows overall, they would, what was the example? that we talked about before we started recording, like the Alka-Seltzer hour or whatever?
Oh yeah, I just made something up, but you know what? Here's a slight leak to our patrons. One of the things that I'll send out to some people is some postcards from 1945's Kellogg's breakfast hour. But that's exactly the thing that we were just talking about, where Kellogg's cereal had a radio show with a guy, I think his name was Tom Brenneman. He was the host. And it was a show weekly brought to you by Kellogg's cereal. There were a lot of those through the 40s and 50s and even into the 60s, where a brand was, they were sponsoring the content. They were the featured supporter of everything. But it's not like the whole show was about their content. They threw an ad read in about, I'm sure, how Kellogg's was the most nutritious thing you could eat. And for those who have just discovered the truth about cornflakes, the meme that's going around, there's a little more delicious irony to this. But anyway, it's that same kind of relationship. And some of those are coming back in a way that's a little bit different because it's 2019. But the basics of it are exactly the same. That's what some of those brands in Caleb's comment, really what they're doing to support content. So, congratulations. We're back to 1942.
We are. And I guess that's because it worked well then and it can work well now. It reminds me, I remember my dad told me one time about segments being sponsored by cigarettes, by like Lucky Strike or whatever. And it'd be, some variety show where Edie Wynn would come out and just start smoking and just talk about like the smooth, crisp smoke of Lucky Strike or whatever. Could you imagine that happening today where, like, I don't know, Phil DeFranco all of a sudden just like lights up in the middle of his daily show and just starts puffing away and talking about Marb Reds? Like, that would be ridiculous.
I can see him on a pack of cigarettes. I can see him, on a cereal. I can see him on cinnamon toast.
Well, you can literally see him on cereal toast. That's not just your dream, Matt. That dream became a reality. But anyway, that is all to say a few things. First, Caleb, thank you so much for the comment. Not only will we be discussing questions and comments from our patrons on this show or our Discord members, but also just on the YouTube video, because we really appreciate the feedback from you guys. And it is also to say that I want to really dive into this comment and this idea with a guest, by interviewing somebody from the brand side or the business side, because look, I have the creator perspective on this, on working with brands and how it should work and how it shouldn't work. But what I'd really like to hear, what I think would be most valuable for all of us, is sitting down with somebody on the brand side or the business side to say, hey, like, cute idea that you have there, Kevin, on how this whole thing should work or shouldn't work, but here's the reality of the situation. Here's the bottom line for a company doing these sponsorships, because that's a perspective that I think is integral to this discussion.
Mm-hmm. And there's some basics too about how sponsorship works at all. Like, I don't think too many people who watch videos or who watch TV even understand how something other than a straight up retail product works. So like if there's a sponsorship where a company is saying, I'm trying to think of an example. Let's say it's a video game and they get somebody to make a video that's going to drop on release day. The obvious goal is for people to buy and download that game. That's really 100% clear to everybody. But if there's something like a TV commercial for like hernia mesh or like some of those things, I look at that and I think, okay, don't the people who need this kind of thing know about it from their doctor? Like, nobody who doesn't need hernia mesh, or lawsuits or something, is watching this commercial and being like, oh, that sounds interesting. Today's the day. I'm going to call the number. No. But there's obviously value to whatever brand that is, or, some of the weird drugs that are advertised, some of the prescription drugs. Like, you'd think that people would know about these pills for pretty highly specific diseases and afflictions. Like, why do you need a commercial to present that to the audience, right? But there's clearly value to the brand. Otherwise, they would not advertise in that way. So that's a relationship between a brand and a bunch of content, because that's going into some time slot, some specific show for a reason. And that's not totally dissimilar from what you're talking about with looking at it from the brand side. It would be awesome to find somebody who's, energetic and responsive in a way, and they're not just crunching numbers and can go over some of this stuff. That would be awesome.
What you just reminded me of is I've always found it really strange, and I'm sure it makes perfect sense, and I hope that somebody listening out there knows exactly the answer to this, but I always found it bizarre that there are commercials for things like cheese. Like, not like Sargento. Not like Sargento is like, hey, we're Sargento. We're a family business, and we've been making cheese for 100 years, so buy Sargento cheese. No, the commercial is literally just like cheese.
Oh.
Get some cheese. It's delicious. Or like avocados. Like, avocados.
That was the Got Milk. That was the Got Milk ad campaign. That was just like the whatever advocacy group handles dairy. It's like, hey, milk is a better option than all those other things you can swallow. Go buy whatever brand of milk.
Commercial. I wish that was the actual tagline. Better than all that other stuff you could swallow. That would have went over really well. But I want to know more about these, like the milk, cheese, avocado mafia that gets together millions and millions of dollars of money to create these gigantic ad campaigns to remind people, like, hey, cheese is a thing that you could eat. Mm-hmm. Do you like eating? Try cheese. That's one of the things that you could eat. And we would love if you ate more of it. That just seems so bizarre to me. And I want more information about how and why those things happen. It must be, is it like a union thing? Are there like avocado unions where they get more money if more people buy avocados?
There are industry groups, right? I can't think of the term on this, but like that's the thing for the Got Milk and the dairy stuff. I don't know if it's like American Dairy Council or whatever. Like, who knows? But their responsibility is to promote the industry. Some do that better than others, but you'll get it as highly specific as cheese, as opposed to like, well, I mean, I guess milk is just as specific as cheese, but it's just their responsibility to raise the awareness for whatever their thing is. And it could be avocados. It could be, California raisins was, I think that was, the agricultural like raisin wing of California. I don't know. But I don't think it was a specific company. So, and that was really effective. Who knows what it did to raisins? I don't know. But it works, it works like with California and wines. That was a really successful one because I don't think people for decades even thought of California as a wine producing place. Most people, I bet, couldn't name a lot of specific brands that come out of California, but they know that, there's like wine valleys in California. That's definitely a thing, just like in France. So that was really successful, and I'm sure a lot of businesses have benefited from that.
Yeah. I just want more information about like what my favorite commercial is. Okay, and I hope that everyone has seen this commercial, and if you haven't, I'm sure it's on YouTube. I'm not sure exactly what you would search, but here's how it goes. The commercial is for children exercising. I actually think it's about bones. I think it's about children's bones. This just sounds.
Is that what they're selling?
It sounds so macabre. They're selling children's bones. No, I think it's some group that's worried about osteoporosis, and they're trying to get kids more active so that their bones don't deteriorate so quickly. Here's the commercial. And this commercial is old, yet somehow it continues to air regularly, and they haven't updated it. This is how old it is. The kid is playing a Super Nintendo in the commercial. Okay?
Okay.
Super Nintendo, which since then we've had N64, GameCube, Wii U, and now we're up to Switch. So that was 5 console generations ago.
So it's got to be like 1994, give or take. Does that sound right?
The question to me is whether it was created during the Super Nintendo era, or the people who made it were just such boomers. They were like, well, this is a Nintendo. And that was like all they knew, you know? So there are 2 possibilities there. It's actually that old, or it was just made by people completely out of touch. And that was all they knew to give the kid that represented video games. So anyway, it's this boy, and this boy is clearly very lazy. It shows him using a button to open up the garage door, as if that's like an indication of laziness.
Okay.
It shows him, I believe, standing in a circle, like blowing leaves with a leaf blower instead of using like a rake.
Okay.
And then it shows him, I actually think he's sitting down, like in the backyard, just like blowing leaves around. He's not even standing. And then the laziest thing that he does is that he's like sitting down, holding the leash to his dog while his dog walks on a treadmill. Okay. So he can't even be bothered to walk the dog. But that's not the best part. And it's not why I love this commercial so much. The best part is that at some point he whips out like the first flip phone ever invented. And he dials a number and he calls someone. He calls his grandma, who's in the other room. This boy lives with his elderly grandma, who I believe needs like a cane, even just to walk. And the phone ringing, because she doesn't have a cell phone, the phone is in the kitchen. You know, it's a wall phone, it's a landline in the kitchen. So his grandma is like knitting in the living room, minding her own business. The phone rings. She has to get up and like trudge her elderly body across the house to answer the phone. And who's calling but her grandson, who she has to pass, mind you, to answer the phone. Okay. Her grandson asking her to get him another grape soda. That's the commercial. That's like the end. And it's like, you know, paid for by the osteoporosis warriors of America.
So you just described like 43% of everybody who uses 4chan.
Maybe that's where they got the idea for 4chan.
If instead of grape soda, it was tendies, then we have like half the green texts on that site.
Yeah, it's my favorite commercial. Please look it up. I'm not sure what you would Google or what you would search in the YouTube field, but listen, I will find it. I'll find it. I'll put a link in the description to this video, and I'll put a link in Discord. I'll post it in the Patreon. I'll do a public post in the Patreon so you can see it there.
Will you get a tattoo of the best scene in the commercial, though? Like all the way across your back?
All the way across my stomach, like Thug Life, like Tupac. Yeah. It's so good.
To relate this to YouTube stuff, though, it actually is kind of related. These general things, like that's clearly a campaign for healthy activity and this and that, which is a pretty nebulous thing. Like I don't even know how they'd measure the impact of an ad like that. You couldn't. But this is the kind of thing that happens in your world, where places in YouTube itself wants to promote STEM education, science education, engineering, technology, just all of this stuff. Like there are absolutely kind of general awareness campaigns where it's like, hey, let's get kids into math.
All right, and we're back after that little fun snafu where I did not plug the laptop in, so the battery died, so everything shut off, and it was a bit of a surprise, but not that bad of a surprise. It could have been a lot worse. I basically just had to plug the thing in.
So it froze on my end. I knew there was a problem when I saw your face, like you were like lunging at the computer, and it's like that, and it froze there, and I hear nothing. I see no movement, and I'm like, oh, something's happened here. But I didn't hear like a gun go off or anything. I mean, I knew it wasn't awful, but I thought actually the computer it had like started to fall or something like that. But anyway, you call it snafu. Dave, who has to do a little editing magic, probably calls it something else. A little bit more on the disastrous side, but this stuff happens all the time. I don't think people realize like if you work from home, this isn't even a YouTube thing, right? If you work from home, your life is a series of like comedic disasters every single day. Just dumb things happen over and over. And as this was happening, I'm looking down at my phone, thinking that Kevin's computer is out of commission. I'm going to get a message on my phone instead. I'm looking down. I'm like, oh, yeah, my fly's been down. And probably all day long, I'm like, this is the life. This is what happens. This is my existence.
You just walk around like a total mess, embarrassing yourself in front of your cat and your dog.
Like the pets know all of this stuff, and they definitely judge us. They're like, oh, how did I get paired up with this one? You know,
there are so many stories that I have too about making YouTube videos, and having the littlest thing go wrong. So like the thing unplugging is nothing compared to, I had a cowlick once in a video. I did a video. It was the video on Vsauce 2 was initially called The Water Fountain You Pee In. It's now called The Invention of Toilets, I think. We changed the title just to kind of blend it in with the other videos into a series, so it kind of made more sense as it being as each of these videos being part of a series.
Can we change that again, by the way? Because the invention of poo poo pee pee would be pretty good. Like, I think you do that. You change thumbnail to Pepe on the toilet, maybe throw in little PewDiePie face, and you've got a good video. And
then I get the most dislikes that I've ever gotten on Vsauce 2 because nobody clicking that is going to get what they wanted.
Yeah, no, they won't. But it would be.
But you would be amused, and that's all that matters. Yeah.
Yeah. When it pops up in my feed again, I'm going to lose it. I'm going to go insane over how good that is. And I'll just keep smashing the like button, even though it only registers once.
Yeah.
Probably break my phone in the process, and therefore I will stimulate the economy when I buy a new one. So if you care about America, if you're a real American, Kevin, you'll do this.
How did this go from Pepe to weird nationalism? Look, let me finish my story.
It's a global economy. It's not even an American economy. It's a global economy.
We're just lifting everyone one Pepe thumbnail at a time out of poverty. I don't think that's how it works. But
no.
Let me talk about my cowlick, because here's what happened. I had this cowlick sticking up and flopping around for the entire video. The video is I shot next to a toilet, okay? And in the beginning of the video, I drank water out of the toilet.
As you do.
Right. As I do on a daily basis. It's where water comes from.
When you're thirsty, that's the go-to.
It's just like toilets are just like big glasses of water, basically. So anyway, when I saw the cowlick, I just sank because I did not want to reshoot this video. I didn't want to drink more toilet water. I didn't want it to do it really that much to begin with. But I went through with it. I got it on camera. And then this horrible, like embarrassing, distracting cowlick was just dangling and flopping around the whole time. So luckily, Eric Langley, our VFX master at Vsauce, rotoscoped, like painstakingly went through and removed my cowlick from every single clip in that video. And it took him literally all night. I think I finally got the folder of the new files at about maybe like 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. And nobody knew about that. You just watch the video of me drinking toilet water, and you never think for a second that a cowlick caused somebody else to have a really long night, just to avoid all of the comments from people understandably being like, your hair is really distracting, or like, you know, why didn't you reshoot this and comb your hair, or whatever it would have been.
Well,
we couldn't go out like that.
Yeah. We've talked in the past. We mentioned the potato paradox thing, didn't we? Where that level of detail, you talk about nobody notices that or knows that something as simple or insignificant as a cowlick is going to take hours and hours. You know, the level of detail or the amount of time that you put in to make sure that every detail is hit is tremendous, because if there's something that's slightly off, somebody's going to notice. And with the amount of views that your videos get, if like 1 in 10,000 people notices, that means like 50 to 100 people are going to notice, maybe more. And that's a lot of people. Imagine 100 people surrounding you in a room, like screaming at you for screwing something up. And in the potato paradox, at a certain point, if you guys haven't seen this video, Kevin dumps a bag of 100 little potatoes onto the table, and one of them rolls off. And for one frame, like it's got to be a single frame, you see this potato just jumping off in a little blurry ball off the edge of the table. And how many people pointed out, like, hey, at 347, you know, you're down to 99 potatoes at that point. I definitely saw that potato roll off the table. Yeah. So, like, even a detail that insignificant, somebody's going to pick up. So you do whatever you can to make sure that those little foibles and those little problems don't happen. And it's a lot of effort. It's a lot of time. It's a lot of stress too, if you care about being as good as you can be.
Well, because it only takes one person to notice a thing, but then as soon as they point it out, everyone is going to thumbs up that comment and they'll all notice it. It's like when you learn a new word and all of a sudden you hear that word everywhere. Well, that word just didn't suddenly manifest. It's like you just learned it, so now you're noticing it all the time. Or if you get a new car and all of a sudden you notice your car everywhere. You're like, well, I just got this like Toyota Camry, and now all I see is everybody has a Toyota Camry. It's just like once a thing becomes something that you notice, then you, because we are obsessed with patterns and noticing things, you just see it everywhere. And then it just snowballs.
I just made a connection here in my head about what you're talking about and something TCU related, right? So you're talking about these little things that are tremendous problems during your day, whether, again, you work at home, like, some of the people in our Discord, they're working at home all day, where they're working on, art projects at home, whatever. Some people are actually doing YouTube stuff specifically, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't really matter if you're doing, what you're doing, as long as you're in that home setting, and all this kind of stuff goes wrong. And I just remembered that a couple weeks ago, dropped a video called "Click or My Eyes Explode." You actually almost exploded your eyes. You narrowly avoided having your eyes explode.
Well, my eyes have been exploding for years now, and
It's a slow burn.
It's a slow burn. Yeah, I know exactly. They're just smoldering in my skull. So, obviously I wear corrective lenses. I'm nearsighted. I can't see things that are far away. And these glasses, magnify the world for me so that I can see it in, crystalline, clear detail. But I also stare at a computer all day and have done so for, the better part of 10 years. That's beginning to catch up with me, and my eyes have just gotten really, really tired throughout the day. And they're kind of tired all day, but it gets really like almost incapacitating by the afternoon. And about a year or so ago, I bought blue light blocking glasses, thinking, okay, it's probably the blue light that's making my eyes tired. I'm going to invest in these. There's a company called Gunnar that makes like gamer glasses that block blue light.
I have. Mine aren't prescription, but and we're not being sponsored by Gunnar. We just actually have these, but
you look like Sally Jesse Raphael.
Yeah, this is there. So I don't know how the color's coming across, but the frames are actually like traffic cone orange. Again, nobody's seeing this except the cat and the dog, so it's okay. But yeah, I had some eye fatigue too, and I thought, hey, blue light glasses are going to do it. They actually did for me. I mean, that's quite good, but I didn't have the issue that you're talking about where you need actual lenses to see the world properly in addition to blue light reduction.
Yeah. So then Gunnar offers prescription blue light blocking glasses. So I bought them. I wore them for a long time. I didn't really notice that much of a difference though. So when I needed to get my prescription updated, I didn't get the Gunnars updated because I'm like, these things don't really do anything anyway. I'm not going to spend, they're not cheap. They're a couple $100. I'm not going to spend another couple $100 on a thing that I don't really feel is working. So fast forward to like last week when I'm at the end of my rope with the amount of trouble that I'm having with my eyeballs. And like, it's true, man. Like my eyes are tired. They hurt. I don't know how to describe it. They're like dry and it just sounds gross to talk about, but it's true.
It's like a Visine commercial where they show eyes made of like cracking mud. Desert eyes.
My eyes are desert mud, cracking mud eyes. I have moisturizing eye drops that are like non-preservative and they were recommended by the optometrist and all this stuff. It doesn't matter. Like it's not getting better. It's getting worse, in fact. So I recently learned, literally a couple of days ago, that while the blue light obviously is a problem, another problem is just wearing your full strength prescription glasses to stare at something that's only a couple of feet away. Because apparently what happens is you don't need that full magnification to see something like this far away. So your eyes instead are trying to like adjust and make up for the magnification because it doesn't need to look far away. So you're using eyeball muscles to literally focus on something that's not that far in lieu of your magnified glasses eyeballs. And it's just like incredibly tiring, like physically tiring. Literally, your eyeballs are just like working out all day trying to focus on something 2 feet away. And you're supposed to, the long story short is that you're supposed to get like a weaker prescription called like a close prescription that will allow you to see things in focus only a couple of feet away. But if you looked into the distance, it would be blurry because they're not strong enough to allow you to like read the eye chart on the other side of the room.
So what you're saying here is that thousands of people who watched that video, the entire TC universe came together. We all clicked and your eyes didn't explode. That's all I'm hearing here. I mean, you can go through the science, you can go over prescriptions in newfangled medicine. Go ahead. But I know what really happened. I know the truth. We all clicked. We saved your life.
The reason that I'm bringing it up is because I feel like maybe you already know this. Maybe people already know this and it's common knowledge. It wasn't common knowledge to me. I didn't know this just until recently, and I feel like everybody should know this. And if somebody who's listening who knows a ton about this wants to correct me on this, by all means, please go ahead and do this. If I'm like spreading misinformation about like eyeball health, let me know. But as far as I know, my eye doctor just told me 2 days ago that what I've been doing all these years, staring at a computer with my full strength prescription glasses, has been a really bad idea. And I wish that I knew that like 10 years ago when I started working full time online.
The physical wear and tear is tremendous. And it's like, the average career of an NFL running back is only a couple years. The average eyeball career of a YouTuber must be like 36 months. Instead of the running back's knees exploding, your eyeballs just melt out of your face at a certain point.
Yeah, they just turn into the California raisins that we were talking about earlier. They just
which how many people listening to this even know what they are? Because that campaign was like 1988. I was 5 or 6, about that age when that was going on. So yeah, I mean, somebody brought up a movie in the Discord the other day, Hackers. You remember that movie? Yeah. And that was 1995. I'm like, oh, I remember being in middle school and seeing that in the theater. And they said, well, I was born in 1997. I was -2. I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, there's a strange amount of wear and tear. And the weird thing about doing a solitary kind of thing, which I want to mention something about because it's kind of relative to this. The solitary things, there's nobody next to you to point out any of these solutions or problems. Nobody's seeing you strain your eyes. Like, I'm sure your face changed. Like, it was clear that you were straining. You never knew. I'm sure something like that was happening. And if you were in a regular office space, somebody's going to be like, hey, what's going on with your eyes? There's nobody to do that. I don't know if you remember, but it was last January. I had a month of splitting headaches. Do you remember me talking about that? Where every day it was like, oh, give me an hour for this handful of Aleve and Tylenols to kick in.
Yeah, every day.
Every single day. Yeah, I'd wake up. It didn't matter how much sleep I got, what I was doing. I thought, well, maybe I'm dehydrated. I'm pounding, tons of water. Nothing is working. And the difference was that I got the awesome Mac desktop with the 27-inch Retina in 96K resolution that's powered by a nuclear reactor. And it was turned all the way up. The brightness was turned all the way up. And my eyes, it just destroyed them. And I thought, oh, maybe that's it, and put it way, way down low. And I haven't had any headaches since. I'm sure somebody could have looked at me and thought, like, oh, you're squinting and it looks like you're in pain as you're reading your email. What's that about? Or like, your monitor is tanning my skin. It's probably too bright. But these things totally happen all the time. And it affects your work. It affects your mood. It derails whatever you're working on, projects. And you think at a certain point, like, maybe I don't actually like this job or this life, and I don't want to do creative stuff. It's that significant. Like, the weird little health related things are that significant to the overall thrust of it. But the point that I was going to make about it being the solitary thing, Somebody on Twitter was talking about aptitude tests as related to career prospects. I don't know if you took one of those in high school. We took them in 10th grade. It was part of the pre-ACTs. They called it the plan test then. And you did this battery of answers, and it said what the careers you'd be most successful with, what they would be. It gave you 3 suggestions. My number 1 suggestion was long haul trucker. Okay. And I thought, I hadn't thought of this since, like 20 years, right? Until I saw that tweet. And I thought, God, that is actually really, really close to what I do and what I've always done. The actual skill set and work isn't the same thing, but all the characteristics of something like being a long haul trucker are basically this kind of work, this YouTube kind of work. Pretty much working alone. You have long, lengthy work sessions. You don't have a traditional 9 to 5 schedule. It depends on the project that you're doing. You have to be comfortable with solitude. A lot of people aren't. A lot of people go nuts with that kind of thing. So yeah, that popped into my head thinking, God, there are all these factors here that really it's not a lot different than from driving a truck in 1996.
So maybe when automation occurs and, Elon Musk's Tesla trucks are driving themselves, long haul truckers will become YouTubers.
They're absolutely prepared for it.
Yeah.
All they need is like a 3-day technical workshop and they're ready to go.
They're ready to rock. Whoops. I just dropped a bag full of babies. Listen, a couple of weeks ago, I recommended that for your free audiobook, you get Dune because I am reading this book, and I told you that I was halfway through it. Well, I'm still only halfway through it because I haven't read any of it since. This is my confession to you. But the good news here is that you have plenty of time to catch up to me if you download it right now. If you go to audibletrial.com/thecreateunknown, you can get Dune, you can listen to it, and then we can talk about it in the Discord. The reason that I dropped babies is because of the idea baby gang. I have this Ziploc bag full of babies. Things will be happening in the future with the baby gang and these babies. For now, though, I just want you to go to audibletrial.com/thecreateunknown. Download Dune. You can keep the book. It's a 30-day free trial, and then keep the book. Nobody's going to hunt you down and smash your kneecaps or something. This isn't Goodfellas. This is audibletrial.com/thecreateunknown. I got to pick up these babies. But I want to just wrap up our personal health stories with
which is the most boomer thing. I'm going to interrupt you because it's the most boomer thing ever. Is you hit an age, like everybody here knows a million older people who constantly are just talking about their health problems.
Yeah.
So we've just become 80 years old.
We have. But listen up, all of you whippersnappers out there. If there's anything that I really want you to understand is if you have prescription glasses and you're staring at a computer all day, get a weaker prescription because it's going to mess up your eyes. Stop it. I've been napping every day like an 80-year-old, curled up with my Afghan on the couch. Not literally. I mean, I'm exaggerating, but I would have to lay down by 3 or 4 o'clock because of this problem of staring at the computer for, 8 hours, 9 hours straight.
You may not have thousands of people to click and save your eyeballs the way Kevin did. You probably don't. So it's absolutely critical that you pay attention to this because your eyes will explode.
So I did order the close prescription with the blue light blocking technology. They'll be here in a couple of weeks, and I'll report back on how that's going and if I'm still in eyeball Sahara Desert pain and etc. But I just hope that everybody out there who has glasses, or if you don't, I mean, look, dude, Listen, you're laughing at me this whole time because
I know I'm laughing. I'm sort of laughing at you, but I'm laughing at something else.
All right, but because like I'm a nerd with glasses and I'm talking about my glasses problems, like this. But meanwhile, you had like horrible headaches and needed to turn down the brightness of your monitor. So it doesn't matter whether or not you need glasses. Like it's not healthy to be staring at the computer 70 hours a week.
I can't help laughing at the fact that we've uncovered the least effective, most boring pitch ever, which is please join our Discord to find out sometime in October about the health of Kevin's eyes. If you want an update on Kevin's eyesight health, please join and consider subscribing to the Patreon to find out about eyeballs.
Well, listen, this is going to affect whether or not like Vsauce 2 and the Create Unknown even can continue. If I end up having to live out the rest of my days in like a dark room because my eyes can't handle light anymore, that's really going to affect a lot of people.
You'll be like LeVar Burton in the Star Trek series. You'll have to have some kind of visor.
Yes. Which I always thought was
cool. I see
a
lot of YouTubers.
Maybe,
a lot of YouTubers are going to look like that in 10 years.
Maybe subconsciously I've been trying to get to Geordie LaForge. Geordie LaForge look. Look, let's get into the meme. We're not even going to have time to get into our meme. Okay, so let's get into our meme that we saw going around.
We just gave a bunch
Twitter.
Of good advice. A bunch of good eyeball general health advice.
Right.
Now let's talk about the worst advice ever.
So a couple of weeks ago, I saw this tweeted a few times and by people that, I'm following or in my network or whatever. And by a few times, I mean like this same quote was on different images, one of which was Morgan Freeman, as if Morgan Freeman said this, which he definitely didn't. It was just like,
he didn't say this, no.
You got to listen to Morgan Freeman because he is the voice of God after all. But here's what it says. The meme says, don't take criticism from people you would never go to for advice. So don't take criticism from people you would never go to for advice. Matt.
I hate this. I absolutely hate it, but I can't even criticize it because they didn't come to me for advice on making the meme, did they? So I have no right to criticize them.
You don't.
Mind blown.
You're locked out. You're locked out of criticizing this.
Yeah.
This is the antithesis, I think, of a lot of how we feel about developing and improving, especially online. But I mean, certainly this can work in all fields, but definitely for this to be like an online meme where people who work online are sharing it. I'm like, wow, how do you expect to get better at anything that you're doing by completely shutting down the people who are criticizing you? I mean, first of all, here's a question. How many people do you go to for advice? How many?
I bet there are fewer than 5 people who I think of as being somebody who's a go-to person on advice on professional creative. I bet there's 5 or 6 who I would, call up or email or something like that. Beyond that, I don't know the people well enough. So that core is extremely small. 5 or 6 people. It's really amazing if you have that. And I am absolutely blessed to have 5 or 6 experts who I can ask things to. But in the grand scheme of things, thousands will yield a better result than 5.
Well, of course. And the thing is, one of the first things that I thought of, because obviously I'm just running this meme through my own personal experience and my own lens, is when I first started on Vsauce, my energy was really flat, was really low. And guess what? You can go check it out because it's on the internet. You can go, just go to Vsauce 1 and sort by, oldest to newest. And
sort by most boring videos ever. There's a playlist that like puts people to sleep. Is it that bad? And that's just your early videos?
Mine are. I'm not throwing anybody else under the bus on this, but I'll throw myself under the bus. You watch my old Mind Blow videos and just notice how boring I am as a presenter, as a host of information. It was very kind of conversational instead of being like a presenter. It was low energy. It was like, hey, Vsauce, Kevin here. So check out this thing that happened. It wasn't like, this is mind blowing, blah, 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 blah. That had to come from people complaining in the comments that I was boring, that I was really low energy, that I was, not interesting to listen to. And it wasn't that the things that I was showing were boring or that the script that I, wrote for the episode was boring. It was that I was being a boring host. And guess who wasn't going to tell me that? My friends and family. People that I would go to advice for would never say, hey, you know what your problem is, Kevin? Like, this whole YouTube thing is like really cute. And I'm glad that you think that this is going to be a career for you. But you're really boring and really low energy and you need to fix that. They would never say that. There's zero chance that like my mom is going to be like critiquing my performance in such a way that would be beneficial. She would just be supportive and think that it was great. And that's really important to have, not dismissing that as an integral element of doing anything. You need to have a support system, but you also need people who you're not going to go to advice for to give you helpful criticism and constructive criticism.
Right. That's completely true. And we talked about this in a video at this point. It was the one where you made the Matchbox computer with the Shrek chess game. Shrek's a pawn.
Yeah, the game that learns.
The game that learns. We talked about optimal progression in that being a mix of positive and negative feedback. This is honestly the way almost everything works. You've got to have both of those things. And it's very hard to find people who will give you the negative feedback in a way that fits, because, we talk to a bunch of people and have in the past about commenters and audience being over the top and off the mark and rude and all of this stuff. So finding somebody who's accurate with it is really tough. But that negative feedback that pairs with the people who support you and reinforce the things that you're doing well, it is hugely important, and it's extremely hard to find. It's very easy to find capable people who can reinforce what you're doing right and tell you to do more of that. That's good. It's tough to find the negative feedback, but we online have incredible access to crowdsourcing criticism. And that is the most underrated thing of all time. Absolutely underrated. And when I see a meme like that, nobody thinks I'm going to go to, Fartbox73 for advice. But you have 1,000 people with screen names like Fartbox73 who can criticize you.
Is really gross. Is it like a box that farts, or is it a box filled with farts? What is a fart box?
There's so many directions you can go. yeah.
It's like a
always read
box.
A good fart box slow end.
Yeah.
So crowdsourcing the bad stuff that the people you work with and friends and the boyfriends and girlfriends and all of that, what they don't want to say. Oh, it is so useful. I was talking to somebody who we're going to interview in a couple weeks about exactly this. And I forget the specific scenario, but he found something in his comments that he wasn't doing well, or that lost people. Again, I forget exactly what it was, but it was a game changer when he realized that a few people were picking up on this point. He stopped doing that in his videos. He smoothed it over. That was gone. It paid off extremely well. I think it might have been a content issue. He went in a certain direction. Vsauce 2 has benefited from some of that as well. And we talked a bit forever ago about it.
A lot over the years.
Mm-hmm.
And, if you have somebody in your life who you go to advice for that is candid with you and that will give you that level of constructive criticism, that is amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And you're really lucky. I think that's probably very rare to have that sort of mentorship. Like,
yep.
Congratulations. I don't know how you found Obi-Wan Kenobi, but like that's awesome.
Yeah.
I don't think most people have that. And even if you do, I think there's an element of the fact that they know you so well and that you know them that muddies the waters, or like could taint the criticism in such a way where receiving it from somebody who knows nothing about you and is just giving you criticism on a face value presentation or prospect is not something to throw away or discard. Maybe they're wrong, and maybe you can dismiss their criticism as being not helpful to you in some regard. And maybe they're just trolls, and that's its own thing. Where, if somebody is just trolling you and trying to get a rise out of you and trying to get you to notice them by being a jerk, well, guess what? That isn't really criticism. That's really just kind of abusive online nonsense. And I don't think that should even be considered part of what real criticism is.
It isn't, but it always gets lumped into that. Any sort of unsolicited feedback, unsolicited advice seems to get the same label. Whether it's good, bad, useless, useful, it's just as long as somebody opens up and says something without you first having asked, it's like, oh, that's a different kind of thing. But it's not. There are verticals within that that are completely and totally separate. And when you can distill really actual criticism, even if it doesn't seem like many people share that, or if it's, unreasonable, it's usually real for that person. It's worth taking into account. You have to make a decision about whether it's something that matters so much that you implement whatever you think about it. But the point is that you need to be open to it. You need to put yourself out there to find out this criticism, beg for it, and then sort through it. And a lot of it's going to be bad. We talked about this with, I think with Justine, it was quite a while ago, but a lot of it's going to be bad. And you just have to throw that in the useless bin, just get on past it and go to the things that aren't bad. Because when you find the gem, it's like Casey Neistat said, the thing that is most unsettling is if somebody rips him in a comment and he realizes that they're right. Like and you need to be unsettled that way. You need to be kind of shaken where somebody is getting so deep into what you do. They're really hitting it so hard that they find something that you're not doing well and it shakes you. So that's going to stick with me forever. When he said that, like, yeah, I'm going to go, damn, they're right. Oh, that is invaluable. That's the best thing in the world. And it almost always comes from somebody who you wouldn't go to for advice.
somebody you couldn't possibly go to for advice because you don't even know who they are because their name is Fartbox. And
Fartbox 73. That's right.
and I actually, also think about this in terms of stand-up comedians because that's the entire game of doing stand-up comedy. That entire craft is based around defying this idea. Because look, when Dave Chappelle or Jerry Seinfeld or Jim Gaffigan, George Carlin, whomever the stand-up comic is, goes out on stage, look, they don't just write down jokes and then go record a Netflix special. It doesn't work that way. They have to work out the material for a really long time, like a full year often, before the material is quote unquote ready to be recorded for the special. Like if you watch comedians in cars getting coffee, they talk about this all the time. And the craft of developing that material comes from the feedback of strangers, of people you can't possibly go to for advice because you don't know them, but they're the ones critiquing your work as a stand-up comic. And it's a really simple critique. Here it is. Is it funny or is it not funny? That's it. That's the critique.
If I put out a meme that said, only tell jokes to people who are definitely going to laugh at them, you would think it was the stupidest thing in the world. That's the dumbest possible advice. And it's kind of the same thing. Like, no, you tell the jokes to people who may not laugh at them and then find out why they didn't laugh. See what you can do differently, whether it's talking about a different topic. Maybe what you're trying to joke about just isn't funny to people. Maybe it's your delivery. Maybe it's your timing. Who knows? But they're going to give you bad feedback, and then you figure out how that applies to what you're doing. And it's maybe tweaking it. It's tossing it, perhaps. Whatever it is, those are the most useful people, the ones who think you stink. It's like in the first Spider-Man movie. They're doing man on the street interviews, the Tobey Maguire one, right? And one of them is Jim Norton, and they ask him what he thinks of Spider-Man, and he's like, he stinks and I don't like him. And that's Jim Norton in the entire movie. That's his only line in it. But it's awesome. Well, it's important to know who thinks you stink. And then, and find out why. Then you can stink less, or you can avoid the things that make them think you stink. Just a ton of different ways around it. But you've got to have that. And the faster you embrace that criticism and then start implementing it, the faster you stop sinking. You start to suck less, and you start to suck less faster. This is huge, absolutely huge. I used to see it with writing when I was younger, and I was working with people who were college age on their writing. A lot of them had done really well in high school. They had been some of the better writers in their classes. And so it didn't even occur to them that they weren't amazing. They never had any feedback mechanism that said, oh, this page really could have been 2 sentences instead. It just was kind of boring. It lost me. Some had a little bit of that, but not to the extent that you really need. And so it took them a while to get used to that kind of criticism. They'd never had it, but oh my God, did they progress quickly. That's the best part of it. Once they were like, I can see how this could be better. Then in the course of one semester, they went from being mediocre to really, really good. So they had it in them the whole time. They just needed it to be refined. They'd had lots of the positive feedback, but they'd either ignored or not had access to a lot of that really critical negative feedback. And the twisted thing here is that the negative stuff is paradoxically the most positive.
Yeah, I remember my first film professor, she taught through criticism. Like if you made whatever the project was, You need to make a 30-second commercial. You need to make a short film. You need to make like an action sequence, whatever it was. There was no praise to go around because it's a big class. There are a lot of projects. There's not a lot of time. So she could only spend so much time with each group or with each student. So that time was spent saying, this is bad, this is bad, this is bad, this is bad. Now, look, I would say that's somebody I would go to advice for. So, maybe that doesn't play into the meme criticism, but it is to say that you do need criticism to develop because all of this stuff is a negotiation. Being a YouTuber is a negotiation. Being a stand-up comedian is a negotiation. Being a human being in society is a negotiation between what you think.
We're getting meta.
I know. Well, look.
This just blew up. This is like meaning of life level stuff. This is good.
It's seriously a negotiation between what you think and what the people around you think and what people who don't know you think of what you're doing, no matter what it is, whether it's like how you're behaving at the bank or it's your latest YouTube video about your Fabergé egg collection. You can have what you think is good and what your family and friends think are good and people who know you think is good. And then you have what people who do not know you and don't care about you and have no stake in your feelings think. And somehow you need to negotiate between those two things and blend both to create something that really works. Because if you're just, doing things like, it reminds me of, was it Big Daddy, where the Adam Sandler movie, Big Daddy? Did you ever see that?
Well, yeah, a long time
ago. I know, so I don't remember it well. But at some point, the kid like comes out of the bathroom wearing like flippers. He's dressed like very bizarrely, and he says that his new name is like Frankenstein.
That's right. Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm. All right. Well, that's not really a good idea to like walk to, a job interview wearing like Scuba Steve flippers and introduce yourself as Frankenstein if you want to, work the register at McDonald's or be an insurance agent. Like at some point, there has to be some interplay between like your personality and the expectations of people who don't know or care about you.
Yep. And one of the really cool results of thinking about it this way is that when you get all the negative criticism and decide that you still want to do what you do your own way, then you have a purpose for doing it and you really own that purpose. And I think of one of your guys, Kurt Cobain, who I'm sure was told over and over and over, your songs blow. Why don't you just do like Guns N' Roses covers? When he was coming up, I'm sure that he was pushed and pulled in poppier directions all the time. Well, he rejected a lot of that criticism and absolutely owned the style of art that he wanted to do. And I'm sure that he had a lot of confidence in what he was doing with Nirvana. I don't think he probably ever, he was all over the place in a lot of different areas, but it seemed to me like he had a pretty clear sense of what Nirvana and their music were about. And that kind of thing is the result of dealing with the criticism, processing it through, whether it's taking it to heart, accepting and implementing it, or saying, yeah, okay, I really don't want to do that. I don't want to play like top 40 pop singles. So, forget that. I'm going to do, Smells Like Teen Spirit instead, which turns out to be massively popular anyway, because it's so unique and so good.
Yeah, well, he blended like his big influence growing up were the Beatles, and the Beatles were, the poppiest band. They invented in some ways like bands pop music. And then he blended that with kind of like the punk, anti-authoritarian, kind of crazy, loud, screaming music that was purposefully not commercial, like the Poison and the Motley Crues of their day in the 80s, and meshed those two things where it was like, you know, the poppy kind of verse, chorus, verse music is palatable and good, and people like that. But also, you know, I want to be anti-authoritarian and a punk and whatever, and merge those two things to create something new. So you're right. I think that the trick is often to figure out how to implement your own unique personality into something that people can understand who don't know you. And there's no way you're ever going to do that. It's impossible if you don't listen to people who you wouldn't go to advice for.
Nope. It will not happen. To reiterate what you said, you've got to process that stuff through. You absolutely have to go through all of it, the positive and the negative. And each time you do that, you further hone what you're actually doing and how you feel about what you're doing. Every time there's a positive thing, like, oh, I'm glad it works out that way. I feel good about having done this. I'm going to do a little more of it, or I'm going to keep doing it, you know, rather than do less. If it's a really negative thing, it's like, maybe I should change that. Maybe I don't want to change that. And now I'm even stronger in my belief about what I'm doing and why. They're like, there's no way to lose here. There's absolutely no way to lose as long as you take this criticism and process it through. You're absolutely going to be stronger. And if you ignore all the advice from the people that you never go to for advice, you're probably not going to get anywhere useful. It's probably not going to happen, first of all. If it does, it's going to take forever because you're just kicking to the curb the value of that negative feedback, which, as we talked about in the game that learns, like, this makes things much, much slower. So it's either not going to happen or happen very slowly. And even if it does, is it really going to be you if you haven't gone through every possible exercise about your values, your attitudes, why you're doing the little things you're doing, from technical to conceptual and philosophical? Like, even we talked about this with our first episode, why we're doing a show like this, why we're building the community the way we are, why we do something like a Patreon, why we'd spend like 12 hours a day in the Discord. Like, that's a reflection of our values, our approach, our vision. All of that happened. All of that happened from a mix of positive and negative feedback, from reading literally tens of thousands of comments on Vsauce 2 videos and understanding how the people we know and make content for, how they process that content, what they like, what they need, and how it matches up with who we are and who we want to be, so that we can be happy doing these things to make them happy. All of this happens because we didn't go to any of those people for advice. They came and shouted it at us, and we listened, thought about it, rejected a bunch, implemented a bunch, and it's awesome.
So there you go. I mean, that sums it up, man. It's like, that's why the two of us just had such visceral, guttural, terrible reactions when that meme popped, because it just seemed like the worst advice. It just seemed like this is the exact opposite philosophy of what people should be implementing into their lives in terms of trying to improve and trying to learn and trying to grow and trying to continue to develop, no matter what it is that you're doing. You're just limiting yourself impossibly if you're only going to learn from like your grandma. Like, that's a really small sample size. That's a really small sample size. And the people who are supporting you, even if they're professional, if they're peers, they're going to err on the side of reinforcing the good stuff. Because number one, that's valuable. We talked about that. Like, you've got to have it. So they're going to start there.
And oftentimes you don't give enough attention to the negative things, or you really want to be safe with the way you deliver them. And so you don't get to them quickly enough or in depth enough. And this is something the guy who I mentioned will be a future guest. He's in a world where it's quite a bit different than ours. He's dealing with things like money from donors that fund a big organization. He's dealing with an audience that is responding to the type of content that makes donors say, yeah, we'd like to support this project. Yeah, but there's this weird juggling and balance that goes on, but I have it. You have it. I mean, how long did it take for us to get comfortable on the criticism, on the two types? It's a juggling thing that it takes forever to figure out, but you have to start doing it so that you can figure out how to handle it, process it efficiently, and actually get somewhere. It killed me. I see this, you sent it to me. I remember waking up to that because I slept in a little bit later. I woke up and I'm still in bed and I'm just like, you got to be kidding me. This is horrible. This is the absolute worst possible thing you could tell somebody. It is the opposite of what works. Everything I know about getting to a good place is upside down in like the 9 words presented here. It's insane.
This is why I wanted to bring it up, because I knew you were just going to go on a tirade about it, because it is so antithetical to all of the things that we talk about and have developed and know works. And no works.
By the way, the extended episode is 7 hours of me continuing to talk about it.
No.
It's 7 hours of me being angry about a meme.
No, that's not true. What is true is that, I'll have to hear about it in like Slack later as you continue to be mad about this meme. I think that sums up the meme. We are going to continue the discussion, though, in the extended episode. You brought up Nirvana and Kurt Cobain earlier. That's something that I will be getting into because Base Weight mentioned that he's a self-admitted music nerd and wants to know what album is most important to each of us. So, spoiler alert, I think that you may know mine, but I'll go into the details about it on the other side of our wormhole.
Can we point out, though, that Base Weight dropped a track on us the other day that was absolutely fantastic. He linked us. So he popped in the Discord and linked us to his SoundCloud. And, it's like, oh yeah, I do music stuff. Just doing that get to know you talk. He links to it and I play the track. It's incredible. It's incredible. And he gave us permission to throw a sample on the transition here on the way out. And so we'll pop his link down in there. If you like the theme that we've got on this show, if you're into the retro wave, synth wave, stuff like that, this song's cool. I was blown away. I was blown away. And there are tons of people like him in the Discord that are doing different things. If they're not creators, they're appreciating different things and talking about that, which is awesome. It's that feedback stuff we've been talking about. So pop in the Discord, consider joining the Patreon. That's always awesome. We'd love to have you and get to know you, but at least jump in the Discord and say, hey, because we've got some incredible people in there who surprise us with good YouTube videos, great art. We have a channel for that art too. And then tracks like the one we're going to play.
Yeah, so we'll listen to Base Weight's music. Thank you so much for listening to The Create Unknown. We're going to extend the conversation with our patreon.com/The Create Unknown experience. But for now, until then, you are about to exit The Create Unknown. See you, Space Cowboys. Thanks for listening to The Create Unknown. You can unlock the rest of this episode by signing up at patreon.com/The Create Unknown. And if you do it right now, you'll get the rest of August 2019 for free.